Dungeons & Dragons has had some of the best fantasy art since the very beginning. Mystara got a huge chunk of that. We're the setting that got love and attention from 3 of the 4 horsemen regularly, with Easley, Elmore, and Caldwell providing everyone with a huge chunk of the most iconic images from the TSR days. And we even got some Parkinson as well. This is something I wanted to recapture when I started restoring Mystara to its former glory. We've got a lot of awesome monsters, characters, and settings that needed artistic representation. The last book I leaned heavily on Rubus and Misha Frumos for the art. This time around I was approached by Bryan Syme of Cobalt Press and White Wolf fame, among others, and for several weeks he's been cranking out images of many of the most powerful characters in the known world, and bringing vision to the many factions that flesh out the best setting in D&D. It's time to look at them. I'm not going to lie when I say I'm not really a fan of the current D&D art. It's fundamentally fine, but it lacks a certain vibe that screams adventure for most of the pieces they've produced. When I think Mystara, I want high adventure, loathsome villains, and inspiring heroes to show off our variety and inspirations. That being said, I forgot to include halflings in the art I've commissioned so far, which is on me. But enough talk. Let's see what he's added to Mystara, and if you want more, check out freemystara.com for the gallery of art I've got so far, and maybe help out with a few donations. I'm funding most of this personally, but if you want good art, you pay for good artists. And Bryan takes up the good and fast parts of the quality pyramid. So guess which leg I'm leaving out. Einwick Shipping was the first piece to appear in the book alphabetically, but not the first one I commissioned. Einwick, not Einswick. I invented the word and I still get them mixed up. These guys are a result of plot spackle, taking an existing element in the setting and filling out the backstory to fully flesh them out. They're the front company for the Minrathad Spy Guild. While looking like merchants, they're often secret agents as well. This lovely lady is a water elf, with a sly smile and elegant frippery everywhere. I wanted a nautical look, and Bryan insisted on the elegant and well-dressed imagery. He does love himself some finery. He even gave her some white-on-white patterns on her trousers, which isn't obvious at first, but is an impressive touch when you notice it. The Brotherhood of the Radiance are the 7 high-powered radiation mages secretly plotting in Glantry, as compared to all the non-high-powered radiation wizards also secretly plotting in Glantry. This one was a bit limiting because there's only 7 characters to draw from, and one appears later in the book and the other one's a small boy. Bryan wasn't familiar with Mystara at first, so I had to explain a good chunk of this setting's weirdness, and most of you are aware of exactly how weird this place gets. He wanted to go with a rad punk vibe for one of the other 5 members. Okay, so this guy's not the elf, the one-armed guy, and he's probably not the radioactive transdimensional Scottish necromancer. So he's either Vansari Vlarduin or Alistair McAllister. Hey, that rhymes. He's meant to look menacing, so my money is on the Flamish guy. Council of the Desert Rose is taken straight from Yularum, and given their first art that I could find. These guys are desert paladins, aka the Fari, and serve as the elite warriors devoted to protecting the Emirates. The art is based heavily off the Horsemen of Tuma from Journey of the Rock, some of the best art from the basic modules, and definitely the highlight of that adventure, even if the art had almost nothing to do with the actual plot. If you pass some saving throws, you ignore the encounter, otherwise you lose some time as they scare you, but they don't actually do any harm. This guy got a hawk added to him, as when I was asking my awesomeness editors how to make the characters from their culture look badass, every single one without exception said, add a bird of prey to the picture. As my Egyptian friend got back to me first, his suggestion was the one that got added. Was a bit disappointed in the art because he wasn't left-handed like the original inspiration. Us Southpaws do gotta represent. Daughters of the Gladius are an expansion of one of our one-line wonders. A group or individual mentioned once in passing and never brought up again. There's more than a few of them appearing in this book. One of Thyatis' many fighter societies, this one is comprised of young women being sent to learn how to handle a sword. They have serious abolitionist leanings, something they don't advertise. If you're a Thyatian noble with a spare daughter hanging around, you send her out to learn how to stab people, then arrange the marriage. The inspiration for the character is Ellen Holman of Spartacus fame. I got to interview her back when I did that sort of thing for a living. That interview stuck with me more than others because she got that part in the show because she was fluent in German. I mentioned I spoke a bit of German back then and she demanded to do the interview in Deutsch. I managed not to embarrass myself, but I was far from fluent. Still, I put her in the book for keeping me in practice. The Dragon Knights are a major part of Mystara's origins, though they suffer badly from its continuity issues. This one is actually a player character from my Beckme days, but like all the characters I insert into a Mystara project, it's not one of mine. She was based on the damsel in distress from the Bestiary of Giants and Dragons, though in our game she was turned into a redhead. There was a bit of confusion in the making of this one because some of the art titles were mixed up, but we got them sorted out. Bryan put her in full plate and added the pocket dragon. Originally there were going to be more of those on the character, but that cost extra. The Fire Wizards of Honor Island. How you vexed me. It vexed Bryan as well. These pyromaniac nautical powerhouses are featured heavily in Irendi, but there's no descriptions of them except for one guy in a short tunic who didn't scream Fire Wizard at all. We wanted to do the ship's captain for one of their dreaded ironclads. The problem was getting our image into a palatable shape. My first idea was similar to a Civil War naval officer, with the fire ships being paddle wheelers and all. Looked awful. It was boring and felt too steampunk. Bryan's replacement looked like a generic fire wizard, and that one was passed on. The idea that we kept came from the movie Donovan's Reef of all places, specifically Cesar Romero's Governor. We gave them a naval vibe, though throw in fantasy elements, and when I suggested having his mustache smoldering, Bryan mentioned he already had that idea written down before I mentioned it. So we had our fire wizard. Golden Totem was a creation for the revised Etrugan book, and one of the few entries that were entirely my creation. This one Bryan consulted his people concerning the Pacific Northwest tribes, as her facial tattoos were different in the original. My awesomeness editor liked the first image, but it wasn't realistic with the actual tribe's traditional tattoos. Bryan redid this with his art and showed it to my awesomeness editor, and everybody agreed the tattoos just looked better compared to the original, so we went with the more aesthetically pleasing, which happened to be the more factually accurate one as well. House Ithel, one of the best bits of expanded lore I've come up with, if I do say so myself, which I don't, as many of you fell in love with the secret evil family that's trying to return to their former glory. The problem we had with this art was the scattered variety on Derrican fashion. The nation doesn't have an obvious single location it was ported over from in Europe, so most people settle on Swiss, but that's not entirely accurate. Still, when I was researching different fashions, I found the Swiss Tracht with its distinctive headwear. We had our House Ithel. Bryan decided the gold and black made the best traditional colors, and we altered the tract so it wasn't obviously from a specific region in Switzerland. The Iron Ring. If there is a more evil, iconic Mystaran bad guy society, I would be hard-pressed to name it. How do you create the group so evil and menacing that other games have stolen them for their villains? Well, whips, shackles, and branding irons are a great start. Then just make them threatening, faceless, and dare I say throw in a bit of Chaos Dwarf, and there you go. Though the Chaos Dwarf part is just me seeing parallels that I'm sure that he didn't intend. This guy is short and thick, but he's just a regular old evil bad guy. The Josh Perdhana are a sect of mystics from Sind that go out into the world and do good deeds. Of all the groups of mystics and monks we have, these guys establish themselves as the adventuring types above and beyond everybody. It was also the easiest to find source material for, as one of the many awesomeness editors introduced me to the real-life Sikh hero Baba Deep Singh, a man literally too angry to die. According to legend, he picked up his severed head in the middle of a battle and carried it to the shrine he was protecting, where he placed it on the altar. Only then did he allow himself to die. We found numerous pieces of art depicting this guy, making him easily the most metal of all the inspirations of art in the book. Of all the Mystara editions I've created, the Knights of Ebony are by far the most popular. Take a high-level adventurer, put him in black armor, and then go fight extraplanar horrors to save the world. This art was sponsored by a longtime fan of the channel and a major supporter of the book. So he took his Renfair character and put him in. Bryan added the Mind Flayer later. The Lighthouse Expedition, aka the one with the nipples. The nudity was decided on after the first character was rejected. There wasn't anything wrong with Indigo Jack Callahan, but it was pointed out that most of the characters were human in a fantasy setting. Where were all the demi-humans and monsters? So we went back to the Etrugan DM's book and looked at all the other options for the Lighthouse, and they were all non-human. Nanny the Black and White was a living Patrick Nagel painting, and that is a man whose style most artists won't even try to mimic. I've been told multiple times his iconic black and white styling is bloody impossible to duplicate. The other two options were rejected because the 18-inch tall Cubit woman had a scaling issue and the Walrus Beastman looked goofy. That left Anna, the Blacklore elf. Her personality involved her embracing public nudity for pure shock value, and all the art of her previous had her topless. Since I'm not a prude, we went with Anna. Madame Maricel's is a full-blown Mr. Welch creation and also a tribute to a fallen friend. The Maritime Manor is an inn in Minrathad that serves as a safe house for exiled shadow elves. This banks heavily on the resemblance between water elves and shadow elves, and includes the standard adventure hooks that all the factions create. For Madame Maricel herself, I wanted to immortalize Rebecca Sheffield, someone that was very close to me before the disease she was born with caught up with her. Doc said she wouldn't make it past 30, she made it to 27. I couldn't find the one picture I had of her, so I had to describe her from memory, and Bryan did a pretty good job after I found the one picture of Olivia Newton-John for that hairstyle Becky rocked all those years ago. I've talked about her on the channel in the past. The Morkborg video, the part where I found Religion of the Judas Priest concert, that was her. The Repossessed was possibly the least exciting art in the entire line. These guys are the dwarven miners that run illegal operations in other countries to clandestinely raise money for a potential coup against their king. That's it, that's their entire concept. Lots of adventure hooks, thematic bad guys that fit in with the Rockholm lore. Still, when describing them to Bryan, he asked if they were evil dwarven miners, and that's exactly what they are. He gave him a pilgrim's hat for some reason, but people liked it. The Seekers of the First. This bit of art still causes all sorts of arguing among the Mystara fans. The Carnifex were the original rulers of the planet until they pissed off the Immortals and got the Nithya treatment, except for the Mind Wipe. But since that was way before Blackmoor, nobody remembers them anyways. The Seekers are cultists that discovered the Carnifex and are looking to free them somehow. The catch was, despite having an entire module devoted to them, there wasn't a single piece of art of them at all. They don't appear outside of Twilight Calling, so this was going to be the first representation of them. It was meant to look like a particular dinosaur, but a lot of people said it was a Skeksis from the Dark Crystal. Even when the image of the dinosaur used was mentioned, it still looks like a Skeksis. The Supreme Symposium is that one-line wonder from Irendi that somehow turned our gnomes into perky little war criminals. These are the guys that make all the fantasy war machines and magical vehicles for various powerful characters around the known world, and then send the blueprints to the guildmasters to build these machines for themselves to retake their homeland. When the day comes, the gnomes bring their own little slice of Verdun to the kobolds. Bryan went full-on Dr. Strangelove with this piece, with my only suggestion to put the grime on her face, as she likes to get her hands dirty. The 10,000 Fists of the Khan is a love letter for anybody who embraces the Ethingar Khanates. This is pure deep dive porn, with a lot of little obscurities that most casual players won't notice. The Fists are the religious group that heads into Glantry to talk about the Immortals, and they're the most hated secret society in that nation. The armor is from a Mongolian exhibit that was referenced for the general vibe, with the red clothing denoting that this is a Kairat warrior, and has facial tattoos similar to Haji, his Khan. None of this would be obvious to anyone who hasn't spent hours scouring the books for video ideas, and this is proof. Thar's Legion is the biggest bunch of organized humanoids in Mystara without question. So just draw an orc and be done with it, right? Well, we wanted something different, and I wanted to redo the red orcs from just an American Indian cartoon parody. So actually reading the descriptions of the red orcs, it was mentioned that they aren't pig-like in appearance, as they are depicted in the book. Instead, red orcs have simian features, specifically orangutan or baboon. So we went with the former appearance, gave them red hair, and there you go. Another piece of art the freelance online influencers can't complain about. The Von Kessler Merchant House is another addition designed to fill a role in the overall setting. Daishan slavers, more specifically Hadean, that work within the laws of their nation. The lawful to the Iron Ring's chaotic evil. We didn't have much of an inspiration for how these guys should look. Bryan decided on going with the Balkan vibe to stay in theme with the Karamiko shenanigans that he noticed permeating the book. The Wizards of the Savage Coast, aside from being a very badly aged gag, is a tie-in to another Mystara project, with this faction coming from the Savage Coast. I thought up the joke name before Wizards of the Coast decided to make themselves quite unpopular, but it did stick. Rather than go with a red vibe because of Cinebril, he went with purple and made the wizard a mutant similar to John Merrick, or that guy from Total Recall. The good one from the 80s, not the remake. I wanted to have a faction linked to the different box sets that expanded the setting, so we got the Wizards in the Lighthouse Expedition. Now I just have to make the rules for them. After we got the factions finished, I decided to hand the Who's Who section over to him, though I went with portraits rather than full body shots because it looked better, and also because it was cheaper and I've already paid him quite a bit of money already. Budgets are a thing and I'm sticking to one. This section is only half as long as the factions, though it still has the same 2-page layout for each individual. I'm surprised how many of these didn't have any art. You'll immediately recognize our first fancy devil as Prince Etienne de Amberville, aka Rad, head of House Sylar, immortal of energy and patron of magic. He's got the most art of anyone by far in this section across all the books. Bryan did go with the white eyes to showcase that he's more human than human. This also inspired me to start looking at getting a piece of art done where Etienne is having a picnic and drinking wine on Karsus Rock going, oh ho ho ho! Ariadna of Alphatia originally didn't look like this because I forgot an important detail. Specifically the fact that she's blue. Originally he was going to do her to look like a black woman, but when I gave him the official description, he went with this more exotic look to showcase her unusual skin tone. That sparked the eternal argument of exactly how blue are noble Alphatians. But we agreed this tone will work just fine. Hosadius, the eternal answer to the question, who's the master? Bryan decided to give him a full villain vibe instead of just a poorly disguised version of the Ayatollah Khomeini. So he took inspiration from the Klan, the Spanish Inquisition, and the Dune Spacers Guild from the TV miniseries. I had him add some jewelry to give him the Persian vibe that the Hooligans are based on, and we got our updated villain. Now we get to Mr. Normal. Corwin Monty, the Chancellor of Darrakan, was the absolute baseline for this series. He's got nothing supernatural about him. He's a merchant turned politician that doesn't have any dark secrets, no disguised magical items. He's just a dude running the country. Even his backstory is pretty mundane. Still, he looks better than the original art, which was even more bland. Matazumi, the chief librarian for the city of Serene. This one was definitely the most confused for something else, as everybody who saw the art originally thought it was a demi-lich. He's not. He's a Druge, though just the skull. Original idea was to have him sitting on his desk with his snifter of brandy and some books, but then budget came into play, so he's back to being just a floating skull. Oren Medidur. Seriously, how does the ruler of the Minorthad guilds have no art? This guy we just made up from scratch. He's a water elf, so he's naturally blonde, and Bryan does love him some jewelry, so the richest man in the guilds has it in spades. Tried to give him a sinister look, because Oren is more than willing to play dirty to get what he wants. Still, the fact that this is the first art this guy has is a bit insulting. King Oberon, Ardry of the Fey Court in all of his glory. Originally he had antlers until I looked at the rest of the Fey lineup and realized so did a large number of the others. I think there was 3 that sported antlers, and another of them having one in his alternate forms. So those became a crown, and away we go. The character is based on Benadryl Creme Brulee from his turn in Midsummer Night's Dream, though he was one of the ensorcelled youths in that one instead of Oberon. Tarovra Farmarva, the Triton Queen. He misread her name initially and started turning her into Titania until I pointed out the error. She turned out to be arguably the best piece for this section according to the testers and proofers. The original art had a bored-looking Triton Queen sitting on her throne, but now she has character, aloofness, and just a barrage of colors. We told him to put this one up in his portfolio. Respin Actarchus is the exiled dragon noble that I included because he's a great one-line wonder, and he's the only chaotic good red dragon I found in all of D&D. This guy is the life of the party, and he's perfectly at home at the royal ball or leading bawdy drinking songs at the local tavern. His amulet lets him shape change, and the fact that it's got his actual face just adds to the charm. I thought it was a bit plain, but the testers loved it. They said this is a guy that could compliment you on your nice table, drink you under said nice table, or hit you with the table if you insulted him. Plus it reminded me of this Irish guy I nearly got into a bar brawl with over at Neil's years ago. Guy shouldn't have gotten handsy with the other guy's girl, though. And who else but Thin-Call Torion to close out the who's who of Mystara? This is the older Thin-Call, which is tricky because the guy likes to keep himself looking younger than he is with magic. He took the throne 40 years ago, remember? But I forgot to mention that part, so we got the Emperor looking a little older than in canon. But his art in Dawn of the Emperors was some of the most dull I've seen, with him just wearing what looks to be an open-faced burqa. So it's still a massive improvement over the original. We did give him a few scars to show what he did for a living before he decided to take on a more dangerous profession. That's the 30 pieces of art I've gotten from Bryan. I'm still paying them off. All your donations have gone straight to him, and they have helped considerably. If you want to look at some of his other non-Mystara art, he is showcased heavily in the Art of Kobold press book, which is out now. I mean, of course, after you finish fawning over his far superior pieces in the Mystara DMG. And that's another section of the Dungeon Master's Guide down. I've got all of these pieces of art up on the gallery at thefreemystara.com. And if you want to help out other ways in the book, I really need the domain section playtested outside of my group. But head over to the website. It's got links to all of the best Mystara sites, as well as a bunch of, well, free Mystara stuff, hence the name. And I will get back to you once I have even more to show off.